guys, welcome to a belated 31 Days of Halloween movie recap. If you don't follow me on social media, then, especially Twitter where I'm most active, then you won't have seen that during my marathon, I was running quite behind. I was busy doing a million different things while trying to watch movies, and then by the end of it, my mental capacity was just non-existent. So I decided after I did part 3 that I wasn't going to do any recaps during October anymore, because it literally would take me an hour to 2 hours to record one, and then it would take me all day to edit. And because I watch all my movies on my laptop, I can't edit and watch movies on my laptop at the same time. So it was cutting into my time. So I'm just like, okay, I'll just do all my recaps in November. And, well, it's November, and, well, if I wait any longer, it'll be December before I do these. So today I am recapping, I believe, films 76 to 95. My goal was to watch 206 films to beat my record of 205 last year. By the time I was getting really tired, I wanted to try and stop at least 190, but I ended up stopping at 188. That's my second lowest amount I've ever done in a 31 Days of Halloween challenge, but that's neither here nor there. So let's just, talk some movies, shall we? Number 76 is Häxan, I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, also known as The Witches or Witchcraft Through the Ages, a 1922 Swedish-Danish silent film directed by Benjamin Christensen from a screenplay by Christensen. It's a documentary-style film based partly on Christensen's study of the Malleus Maleficarum, a 15th century German guide for inquisitors. Häxan is a study of how superstition and the misunderstanding of diseases or mental illness could lead to the hysteria of the witch hunts. Never in my life would I have thought they'd have done documentaries in the 1920s. I now feel ignorant for never even considering it. But it's fascinating to see how one tackles a documentary in that time period, and I have to admit I rather enjoyed it. Perhaps I didn't love the reenactments, but they sure were accurate to what they were depicting. The fact it's a silent film means we're required to read, and that means we're forced to pay closer attention and really absorb the information. So in a way, depending on the person, this way of doing a documentary is maybe more effective. The film is on one of my favorite subjects and one I definitely spent many years studying for fun, but there was plenty in there I did not know and was fascinated to learn. Definitely worth the watch. Number 77, Hell House LLC, a 2015 American found footage horror film written and directed by Stephen Cognetti. The film is shot as a documentary and follows a group of Halloween haunted house creators as they prepare for the 2009 opening of their popular haunted attraction, Hell House. Tragedy strikes on opening night when an unknown malfunction causes the death of 15 tourgoers and staff. The premise initially made me think this was going to be like the houses that October built, which I hated, but it's not. They're in the same niche, but they're different. It's not fantastic. It still follows one aspect of found footage I hate, which is people having private conversations with the intention of no one hearing or seeing them in front of a camera. It's utterly ridiculous, and I wish these films would stop doing that. However, I actually like this film. It's part found footage, part mockumentary, so it changes it a bit and it actually makes me jump. This was my second time watching it now, and I had forgotten the scene that made me jump the most, so during this watch it made me jump all over again, which was awesome. I think I've only jumped 3 times so far in this marathon. I think what makes the film work so well is none of the characters are expecting a haunting or paranormal activity, and they aren't looking for it. So when it happens, it's more surprising. Also, the way people jump out at you is done well. You know it's coming, but it's still creepy enough that it gets a reaction out of me. So it's a fun film and good to revisit. Can't say that for the sequels though. Number 78 is Hell Night, a 1981 American slasher film directed by Tom DeSimon and written by Randy Feldman. The film depicts a night of fraternity hazing set in an old manor during which a deformed killer terrorizes and murders many of the college students. A fun, enjoyable 80s slasher that shockingly isn't overflowing with sex and boobs in every scene. In fact, there's almost none. Sure, there's some making out, but that's about it. For the 80s, that's almost unheard of. It gets tiring looking back at slasher films and seeing all most of them really have is sex, boobs, more sex, and more boobs, and mostly for no reason. So to see a film back then decide, hey, let's actually focus on our characters and give them stuff to do besides get laid is practically revolutionary. I enjoy this, I'd probably watch it again. Most of the characters are smart and level-headed, they know they're being hazed, so as soon as the horror pranks start, they are aware of what's going on and are proactive in stopping them. Smart characters as well, it's a Halloween miracle! I also really like the film's choice of location. Number 79 is Hocus Pocus, a 1993 American fantasy comedy horror drama film directed by Kenny Ortega with a screenplay by Neil Cuthbert and Mick Garris from a story by Garris and David Kirshner. It follows a villainous trio of witches who are inadvertently resurrected by a teenage male virgin in Salem, Massachusetts. So this is still one of the best movies to ever exist, not to mention one of the best Halloween movies and one of my top 10 Halloween movies of all time. And if you don't watch this during the month of October or Halloween itself, we shouldn't be friends. It's so on theme, it's fun, it's dark, it's campy, and even has a song that puts a spell on whoever hears it, literally. The ending is bittersweet and still makes me cry, and it's one of the most fun movies to quote. I lip sync to this movie whenever I watch it. I honestly can't live without this movie for Halloween or any other day of the year for that matter. Bette Midler was born to be Winifred Sanderson. Number 80 is The Hollow, a 2014 horror film directed by Carl Newman and written by Hans Rodenoff. It tells the story of Ian Cranston, a high school teen who has just found out he is the descendant of Ichabod Crane. With the help of his girlfriend Karen, a local bully named Brody, and the old cemetery caretaker Klaus Van Ripper, Ian must stop the newly resurrected Headless Horseman. I can't believe they rated this R. Don't flatter yourself. This is no more horrific than Hocus Pocus. It's a family horror film that I would not be afraid to let either of my nieces see. The violence isn't very violent at all, and the Headless Horseman isn't even headless. He also takes forever to appear. He's absent for about half or more than half of the film, and he has a head. It may be a pumpkin, but it's still his head, so how are you gonna call him headless when he ain't? The performances are fine, but this film is so 2004 it's almost painful. Oddly enough, Nick Carter's character Ian is the only likable character. We have the cliche drunk who knows everything but no one will listen to until it's too late. The jock bully, and at the end of the day, the new guy saves the day and gets the girl, but I don't know why anyone would want her. She's a hypocrite. Seriously, I think I lost interest in the film the moment she says she wants a guy who is interested in more than her pom-poms, real words, but says this while she's feeling the guy up. So do as I say, not as I do, I guess. Not to mention, I just can't watch Kaylee Cuoco in anything without feeling betrayed and traumatized reliving her inclusion in season 8 of Charmed. Not sure I'll ever get over it, really. Really, this film is just painfully mundane and could not hold my attention for more than 30 seconds at a time. Number 81, I Am Not a Serial Killer, a 2016 supernatural psychological horror film directed by Billy O'Brien and written by O'Brien and Christopher Hyde, based on Dan Wells' 2009 novel of the same name. In a small Midwestern town, a troubled teen with homicidal tendencies must hunt down and destroy a supernatural killer while keeping his own inner demons at bay. The benefits of going into many of these films having no idea what they're about is you get to be completely surprised and taken off guard when the story takes a dramatic shift. It also means as I'm watching it, I can see how up to a point the story is really trying to make you question the main character's sanity. What I loved about the story isn't that it's got a supernatural story, it's that the supernatural element allowed main character John realize the kind of person he really is. He's antisocial and has some dark curiosities, but he has people trying to tell him he's a serial killer in the making and diagnosing him as a sociopath, and yet it's not until he's confronted by a real serial killer, albeit supernatural, that we see he really isn't. It was more that people were trying to paint him as that. What we find out is he's far smarter and more observant than the average people in his small town. He has unconventional interests, which in a small town are bad, but he's actually a good person. He's trying to stop this killer, he's trying to save lives, and yes, he does something drastic because based on what everyone has said, he thinks he's capable, but when it comes down to it, he's not. He has compassion, it's just overlooked. He has a dark side to him, but what we can take away from this is you are more than what people see or think of you, and for the most part, we have a choice in the people we want to become. It's a weird story, but it actually works. Number 82, Ichi the Killer, aka Koroshiya Ichi, a 2001 Japanese action crime film directed by Takashi Miike from a screenplay by Sakichi Sato based on the manga series of the same name by Hideo Yamamoto. It follows a psychologically damaged man who is manipulated into assaulting or killing rival faction members of feuding Yakuza gangs while being pursued by a sadomasochistic enforcer. I admit I was actually struggling to follow the storyline, and based on the title and poster, I spent all these years thinking the character of Kakihara was actually Ichi, so I feel the poster is very misleading. That being said, I actually really dislike the character of Ichi. He's like this weird vigilante superhero serial killer, and while some of the kills for him are fun, his overall character was extremely annoying. Kakihara, on the other hand, was a fascinating character, and I really enjoyed him in every scene he's in. Yeah, this is a messed up film, but as with most Japanese films, there were some scenes that got some strong reactions out of me, and I liked it. Number 83, The Invisible Man, a 1933 American pre-code science fiction horror film directed by James Whale from a screenplay by R.C. Sheriff, Philip Wiley, and Preston Sturges, based on the 1897 novel The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells. In it, a scientist finds a way of becoming invisible, but in doing so, he becomes murderously insane. This was the first time watching it, and it was not at all what I was expecting, but I really loved it. It honestly at times felt like a comedy, as some of the characters were quite comical and a couple others were a tad more annoying. But on the whole, it was a very entertaining mad scientist film about a man ultimately destroyed by his own genius. A man whose own hubris eventually turns him into a deranged killer, which is exactly how he is performed, at least vocally. It was fascinating watching them depict the character's invisibility in the 1930s. It was impeccably done, and I was loving every single moment of it. Number 84, The Invisible Man Returns, a 1940 American horror science fiction film directed by Joe May with a story by May, Kurt Sodermack, and Cedric Bulfridge. It's a sequel to the 1933 film The Invisible Man and the second film in the Invisible Man series. The film is about Sir Geoffrey Radcliffe, who is condemned for a murder he did not commit, which leads him to beg Dr. Frank Griffin to inject him with the invisibility serum despite Griffin's warning that the serum will drive him mad. I like how this film ties into the first film by having Dr. Griffin be the brother of the original Invisible Man. It makes the story feel very logical. I also really enjoy this story about a man framed for a crime he didn't commit, so determined to save his own life and clear his name that he would risk his own sanity to do it. I also like that he survives and returns to normal at the end, as it suits the story. In the first film, the man meets his demise, which makes sense as he was never really that good a man to begin with, and he was going around murdering people for fun. But in this place, Radcliffe isn't doing any of this for fun. He's trying to clear his name before he is no longer in his right mind and able to do so. So it's nice to see him have a happy ending. I think Vincent Price was perfect in terms of vocal performance. He had the softness of an innocent man, but was perfect at playing up the insanity when the time came, and the slow progression was obvious in his vocal performance. Loved it. Solid sequel. Number 85, The Invisible Woman, a 1940 American science fiction comedy film directed by A. Edward Sutherland with a screenplay by Robert Lees, Frederick I. Rinaldo, and Gertrude Purcell, from a story by Kurt Sodermack and Joe May. It's a third installment in the Invisible Man series, and in it an attractive model with an ulterior motive volunteers as a guinea pig for an invisibility machine. I love this too! In a way, the Invisible Woman in this is a kind of superhero and an activist in a way. First, she uses her newfound invisibility to teach her dictator boss a lesson so the women of his employ will be treated better in the future. Then on numerous occasions, she helps save the Doctor from criminals trying to steal his invention. She really helps a lot of people and finds love, which also makes it a fun love story. I rather like a story of the playboy who learned to fall in love with a woman he hadn't ever seen, falling for her personality before ever judging her appearance. There's a good lesson there about not judging a book by its cover. May not be horror, but it's a damn good movie. Number 86, Invisible Agent, a 1942 American action spy film directed by Edwin L. Martin with a screenplay by Kurt Sodermack. It's the fourth installment in the Invisible Man series, and in it the Invisible Man's grandson uses his secret formula to spy on Nazi Germany. Well, for starters, I don't recall the Invisible Man having any children in the first film, but okay. At least the concept of a grandson makes some sense, but I really didn't like the story. It's definitely a product of its time, making a film about the war during the war and depicting Germans as bumbling morons easy to defeat and Americans as amazing brave heroes. Sounds like most spy films made during that war. I mean, the Nazis were disgusting people, but they did kill millions and millions of people, so obviously they weren't idiots in that regard, and maybe not a good idea to piss off the people who want to bomb you. That fact aside, I thought it was some poor performances. Half the German characters had accents and the other half didn't, and the ones who did, well, they were bad accents. But again, it's during wartime, so I doubt they cared how they portrayed Germans, which kinda seems lazy. The Invisible Man in this story is an American hero, not the most fun story, but again, definitely a reflection of the time. Number 87, The Invisible Man's Revenge, a 1944 American horror film directed by Ford Beebe with a screenplay by Bertram Milhauser. It's the fifth installment in the Invisible Man series, and in it, an eccentric scientist helps a fugitive from the law become invisible, unwittingly giving him the power to exact revenge on his former friends. I think this film has a lot of missed opportunities. It focused on the lead character's insanity. Now, yes, in the other films, the serum makes the characters mad. The problem with this version is the character was already mad, so there's nowhere else to go. You're just getting more of the same from start to end, and there's no progression or development of the character, and therefore nothing interesting. But its biggest missed opportunity is in the storyline of his rich friends. He believes they tried to kill him and left him for dead. They claim they didn't know he was alive. Well, considering he was in a US asylum, that seems unlikely. How did he get back to the States from Africa? On top of that, the wife drugs him, so that really makes one think he wasn't crazy. And maybe not the husband, but certainly the wife was involved in a plot to get him out of the way so they could get rich. The problem is the story sets up these plots and then does nothing with them. We can theorize all day long that that's what happened, but it's never addressed. I would have much rather see the character use his invisibility, much like in the second film, to expose this happy couple as the liars and criminals they really are, instead of just tell us the guy is crazy and by the end of the film he's still crazy and dead. Number 88, Itsy Bitsy, a 2019 American horror film directed and written by Mika Gallo, inspired by the poem The Itsy Bitsy Spider. It centers on a family who moves into an old secluded mansion where they are stalked by an ancient entity that takes the form of a giant spider. Okay, first of all, wasn't a mansion, that's an exaggeration. Who wrote that synopsis? It's not a mansion, it's just a house. Seriously. That being said, I think the ancient entity storyline was a throwaway thing. I think it's there to give the audience an excuse for why the spider is the way it is and why it stalks people, but it doesn't do much else. We're saying a tribe for hundreds of years worshipped a spider that lived in a jar. How did it survive as long as it did? How did it survive in a jar with no air or food for God knows how long? Or does it just have babies and they kill the others but leave one to worship? That wouldn't make sense. Is it an ancient entity or is it just a giant spider, a unique species? I don't get it. That being said, the spider scared the ever-living shit out of me. I said it in a previous recap, I am arachnophobic, so this film had me freaking out and in tears, triggering some major anxiety. Again, I repeat, don't send me pictures of spiders. I do not find people triggering trauma for me funny. So while this was the only film last month that kind of scared the shit out of me, the story doesn't make sense. The mother's anxiety and drug addiction due to the death of her other child really holds no place in the story and is so predictable. I'm tired of horror films always showing the lead character as someone dealing with some kind of trauma. It's getting annoying. Non-traumatized people can deal with shit too. Can we go back to Poltergeist? They were a happy, functioning family who dealt with something shit. That was good. I would like more of that. Number 89, Jerusalem, a 2015 Israeli supernatural horror film written and directed by the Paz brothers, Doron and Yov. When a couple of American young adults fly to Israel to visit the city of Jerusalem, a biblical nightmare falls upon them. We have one thing happen at the start, and then it's a big steaming pile of nothing for the next hour. It's not called found footage, but that's basically what it is. The opening of the film is a video recording and everything after is shown through smart glasses, which at least justifies why something is always on and recording everything, but at the same time I'm confused. Do smart glasses record everything you do while wearing them 24/7 and upload it to some cloud or something? Is that how they work? Because if not, then it's a fail. I mean, who would feel comfortable wearing something that records and stores everything you do 24/7? Going to the bank, having sex, using the bathroom, that's fucked up. That aside, the film is about Jerusalem being one of the gates of hell and opening during Yom Kippur, which is ironic. There's literally giant Godzilla-sized demons walking around and some other smaller chewed-up wing-type demons flying around, and they look more like zombies with wings. But we don't see much of it, and not until the end of the film. At one point, there's a character who's an archaeologist saying that jinn, golems, and zombies are all the same thing, and a foreshadowing of what will come on the final day. This is stupid. A jinn is a supernatural entity that is neither good or evil, but can be either. A golem is made of an inanimate matter and made by people and often from clay, and a zombie is someone who was once human who died and returned. None of those things are remotely the same. May as well say vampires and werewolves are the same thing. This is stupid. So this film has an hour of nothing until demons appear. Now some of these demons are people who died but have returned, but they look like zombies and have bat wings. Others, I don't even know. But they all look like zombies and all have giant bat wings, and when they bite you or scratch you, you become one. Okay, if you want to use mythology or create your own, okay, pick one thing, not 50, because it is just resulting in a huge mess, which is what this was. Number 90, The Jonestown Haunting, a 2020 British crime horror film directed by Andrew Jones and written by Andrew Jones and Sarah Jones. A survivor of the Jonestown massacre returns to the site 10 years later and discovers the cult's former home has become a breeding ground for the supernatural. Okay, rant time. Let's start with the synopsis. A breeding ground for the supernatural. Not a single supernatural event occurs in this film. Early on, I thought we saw a ghost, but it was just a dream or hallucination and not worth taking notice. This isn't even a horror film, it's just a really shitty drama film and should not call itself horror. The film says it's about a survivor of the Jonestown massacre. That's not even true. While the character is written as being a member of the cult, the character left before the mass suicide happened. She never witnessed it. She witnessed a shooting, the shooting of the US congressman to be exact, and was almost shot and ran away. She's a survivor of that, but not of the massacre itself, technically. So the fact she's going on about being a survivor of it and how she's traumatized by what happened that day is bullshit, because she never saw it happen. We don't even see it because it's never depicted. To make matters worse, as if all that didn't piss me off enough, the end of the film reveals that her therapist is an agent or operative, CIA I think, who was monitoring her and now has to kill her because the entire cult was a government program and the mass suicide was orchestrated to cover it up. Are you fucking kidding me? Not only is this a film where nothing happens and just features a character sleeping a lot and having stupid flashbacks, it's taking a very real event where 918 people died, many of them under the age of 17, and slapped a conspiracy theory on it with no evidence. So the synopsis wants you to believe it's a film about a haunting, and then the film wants you to believe the massacre is a government conspiracy. Fuck off! First of all, how dare you take a historical event and slap a fake story and character on it? There are survivors still alive today who have to deal with what they went through, what they still go through, and you decided to make a film where first you lie about what your film is for attention, and seriously, even trying to say the land is haunted by the ghosts of those who died is still bad. But to say what these people went through was a government conspiracy, are you out of your fucking mind? Why would you do that? How callous do you have to be? I think the makers of this film are conspiracy theorists, but not good ones, because there was nothing in this film even to back up such a claim. The only thing this film did was accurately depict a couple of occurrences and portray and quote Jim Jones. Aside from this, this isn't even a film about the mass killings. It's not about the supernatural, it's just about a made-up woman's flashbacks and some stupid fictional government twist at the end. Fuck the fuck off. Number 91, Joyride, a 2001 American thriller film directed by John Dahl and written by J.J. Abrams and Clay Tava. In it, three young people on a road trip from Colorado to New Jersey talk to a trucker on their CB radio, then must escape when he turns out to be a psychotic killer. The film still holds up for me. While I think Lily Sobieski really doesn't bring much to the film and gives a very underwhelming performance, Paul Walker and Steve Zahn are fantastic, and Ted Lyon was the perfect choice for the voice of Rusty. I think the story and the way it all unfolds is awesome. Great story progression, great levels and twists and surprises. I love that Rusty is this anonymous person who is constantly fucking with them and one-upping them. He is truly a psychopath, and it truly makes this film a joyride, and even though it's been years since I watched it, it still holds up for me. I especially love his motivation. He was humiliated, and humiliation is a great catalyst for revenge. Just don't prank or piss off strangers, or anyone really. But I have to admit, I never could figure out how he knew which car to follow or how he knew they were in the next room. Number 92, Joyride 2 Dead Ahead, a 2008 American thriller film directed by Louis Morneau and written by James Robert Johnston and Bennett Yellen, based on the characters by J.J. Abrams and Clay Tava. It's the sequel to 2001's Joyride and second film in the Joyride series. After their car breaks down in the desert, four friends try to find their way back to civilization while trying to escape Rusty Nail's bloody wrath. I actually think this is a pretty decent sequel. Rusty is back, and since we know he got away at the end of the last film, a sequel is very possible. The opening shows us that he was already a psycho to begin with. He just puts out all the stops for those who piss him off, though I find his motivations not as strong in this film. He's more brutal in this film, and yet the reason why doesn't seem to justify it. Simple theft resulting in torture and murder doesn't seem as interesting as his motivation in the first film. While I can understand how he can contact the main character since she left her number, I'm not so sure how he was able to track them down and find them when they had such a head start on him. That doesn't seem to add up to me. It doesn't quite make sense for a truck, which is very obvious, to manage to be everywhere they are and yet them never notice. So much of that just doesn't add up. But the kills and hunting and toying with his prey are still fun, and Melissa is a bit of a badass, so overall I still enjoy this film. No idea how he survived at the end though. Number 93, Joyride 3, Roadkill, also known as Joyride 3, a 2014 American thriller written and directed by Declan O'Brien. It's the third installment in the Joyride series and a direct sequel to 2008's Joyride 2, Dead Ahead. In it, a group of hot-headed street racers are on their way to the Road Rally 1000. As they drive through a desolate shortcut on the way to the race, a man starts tracking, teasing, and torturing them until the end of the road. Definitely the worst in the series. The performances are great, but our villain Rusty just kinda sucks now. For starters, no idea how he survives at the end of the last film or at the end of this one. I again don't know how he appears everywhere, but mostly his motivations again is getting pettier. A car tried to race him and overtook him, and that warranted hunting, torturing, and killing like 6 people, not to mention the 2 at the start of the movie. In the first film, it felt like semi-warranted retaliation, but he was smart. He played really intricate head games. In this, it's really not about that at all, and is all about the gruesome deaths and how many they can put in one film. And in that, the sequels have really missed the point of what made Rusty such an interesting villain. Plus, he's on the screen so much in this one that he loses impact. Performances are good though, and it's well made. Number 94, Jugface, a 2013 American horror film written and directed by Chad Crawford Kinkle. When she learns the supernatural pit worshipped by her remote community in the woods has demanded her as a blood sacrifice, Ada struggles to find a way to survive while the pit lashes out in anger. It's a small-scale film that works. Considering this is set in a tiny community removed from society, the way this is shot and the limited cast reflects the feeling of isolation and where it's slim pickings on who you're going to shack up with. The horror aspect or supernatural aspects is not necessarily groundbreaking, but still effective. It's similar to other films about cults or communities that worship an entity, no different to films like The Wicker Man. In this, there is a creature, but we never see it. The audience doesn't understand much or anything about it either, and in most cases that would annoy me, but in this it kind of works. The way the story is told and how it all works, you just kind of accept it. But I also feel it again reflects that little community. They're just accustomed to how things are, they don't question it or think that maybe there is or should be another option. It also helps there are some great performances to keep the story interesting. Overall, a pretty interesting little horror flick, I recommend it. Number 95, Kidnapped by a Classmate, also known as Killer Ransom and Gone Daughter Gone, a 2020 thriller directed by Ben Meyerson and written by Adam Meyer. In it, Brooke is starting over in a new town with her mom and wealthy stepdad when she befriends a new guy she meets at school, which leads to her being abducted from her own home. If I had known this was a mid-morning TV crime film, I wouldn't have bothered. The dialogue is horrendous and the most exposition-filled thing I've ever witnessed. I knew what they would say before they did. I knew what they would do because everything was so blatantly obvious. The exposition is so bad. People are announcing when they're going to make calls, announcing when they hear or see something. For fuck's sake, everyone is seeing or hearing the same thing. You don't need to announce it. The mother, while I applaud her tenacity, is extremely annoying, mostly due to dialogue, but the criminal is even worse. He's a thug and killer who randomly decides one day to have a go at kidnapping. No planning, no prep, just she's cute, let's kidnap her right now. Dumbest criminal ever. What makes him even dumber is he ignored his brother who said she's not rich, her stepdad is, and instead only listened to the dumb friend who knew nothing who kept saying she's loaded. Which she isn't. In fact, her mother and her are dirt poor and can barely afford new clothes, and yet, not once does the mother or the daughter who is being held hostage ever say this. This is possibly the dumbest crime I've ever seen, and in no world would it have ever succeeded. This was everything you expected in a mid-morning TV movie. And there you go. That is recap number 4, films 76 to 95. And and I forget how many more I have to go. Not movies, I mean recaps. But anyway, so that was an interesting selection of films and only a couple of rants. Oh god, the Jonestown Haunting. Yep, that is definitely going on my top 10 worst films of 2020. And that was, you know, it's 2020. Not much happened this year, so you got slim options. But that's definitely one of them. But as usual, if you have seen any of these films, please comment down below and tell me what you think of them. And if any of these films you have not seen has piqued your interest, comment down below and let me know about those too. Yep, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, for listening, for supporting. You guys are great. Thank you as always to my patrons who are super supportive. You've got plenty of content coming as well. I'm going to be a busy little bee. Everybody will be happy. Yay. But that's it for today's video. I'm going to stop talking. I will see you guys in the next recap probably. So until then, bye.